200,000 coins have been acquired as compensation for your achievement. We are currently discussing the compensation for the major contributors. After the death of Izumi, Yamada no Orochi's incarnation, the Japanese people immediately surrendered. The collapse of the Absolute Throne loosened, and the power controlling them and the hidden anti-disaster people started appearing. Thank you, Kim Dokcha. I recognized the speaker's face. The greeting was from one of the Japanese people that Yu Jung-hyuk visited, just like I found Oscar Ren. I nodded and greeted the speaker. Kizuki Hiroshi. You know me? You got the Totsuka no tsurugi in a hidden scenario. Huh, that's right. Looks like you heard it from Yu Jung-hyuk. Of course I didn't hear it from Yu Jung-hyuk. I was aware of it because I read the original novel. If I remembered correctly, this person had a sponsor related to the myths of Susanoo and Yamada no Orochi. You managed to kill the Sovereign of 8 Heads. Many things have been settled thanks to you. I will surely repay this kindness. Kizuki led the remaining Japanese people and disappeared. The Japanese who chose to become disasters took advantage of the fact that they wouldn't die even when failing this scenario. Izumi was the incarnation of Yamada no Orochi, but Kizuki was also a powerful and clever incarnation. He would be able to lead the incarnations well, for the time being, after returning to the Tokyo Dome. A constellation born from the sea and storm has revealed his modifier. The constellation Snakecutter has developed a great liking towards you. The constellation Snakecutter was Susanoo, the original master of the SSS grade item, the Totsuka no tsurugi. I glanced at the Totsuka no tsurugi that I gave back to Yu Jung-hyuk. Totsuka no tsurugi had been greatly damaged. It wasn't strange that it was said to have broken after killing Yamada no Orochi. Yu Jung-hyuk stared at me and the party members who had fallen asleep after eating the Elaine's Forest Vital Energy. I thought I was really dead this time. Li Ji-hee shook her head and held her forehead after waking up. It was because of the blow from directly hearing Yamada no Orochi's true voice. No, what was that? I just heard a few words. I didn't get such a surprised feeling when the commander made a visit. Lee Hyun-sung was talking only to freeze when he heard the voice behind him. It looks like you're alive, Lee Hyun-sung. Yu Jung-hyuk. I told you to follow my group. Why didn't you listen? That... Lee Hyun-sung trembled and glanced my way. It was a face asking me to do something, but I couldn't. Yu Jung-hyuk stared at Lee Hyun-sung for a while before turning away. Ajashi! I looked around and saw Shin Yu-sung holding on to me. She looked up at me like she wanted to be picked up. I lightly patted Shin Yu-sung's back. Was it hard? Well done. You did well. I wanted to say something plausible, but these were the only words I had. Shin Yu-sung shook her head from within my arms. Young, it wasn't that hard. Lee Gil-young interrupted and pushed Shin Yu-sung away from my arms. Despite the arguing, the two children seemed quite familiar with each other. As expected, kids understood kids the best. It was worth leaving the two of them together. You're popular with children. I looked at the small person who spoke. Was his name Gilemium? There will be a royal banquet in the evening. The castle is almost collapsed, and the scale will be very small, but I would like to invite you to attend. I looked up at the sky. Time remaining until the end of the scenario, 27 days. The disasters have given up the scenario, and the 6th scenario is scheduled for an early termination. It might take a bit of time because of the disasters scattered throughout the world. However, once Hiroshi went around Peaceland, then the scenario would end automatically. A banquet. Was it to play and drink? Then perhaps. I understand. We will attend. It looks like you are very fond of drinking. Well, it has been hard to see them these days. I brought out a lot of distilled spirits that remained in the warehouse with Gilemium's help. Peaceland's drinks had very low alcohol content, so I needed to make a lot to make the drink I wanted. The constellation Snakecutter is interested in your brewing. I poured alcohol into a bucket the size of a human, threw in all the ingredients I had, and started to stir. 8th head of the Sovereign of 8 Heads. 7th tail of the Sovereign of 8 Heads. These were items that came out when defeating Yamada no Orochi. They were fragments rather than proper body parts because the true body still hadn't appeared. Still, they contained part of the constellation's power. It was only Yu Jung-hyuk who realized what I was going to do. You know this hidden piece. Aren't I a prophet? Now, give me your sword. Yu Jin-hyuk knew what I was going to do and obediently offered his sword. I threw the Totsuka no tsurugi that I had received from Yu Jin-hyuk into the alcohol. Originally, it shouldn't be made like this, but I used a shortcut. The Totsuka no tsurugi melted into the alcohol. 2 tales give meaning to your actions. The narrative of the Sovereign of 8 Heads and the Snake Cutter has been combined. Some parts of the story are damaged due to incorrect transmission. The damaged part was a bit disappointing, but it couldn't be helped. The narrative of Ame no Murakumo no tsurugi is expressed. According to the stories, Ame no Murakumo no tsurugi was the sword that came out of the tail when a drunk Yamana Orochi. However, it was possible to acquire it using a shortcut. In any case, I just needed to drink. Lee Ji asked doubtfully, "Why did you throw the sword into the previous alcohol?" "Wait and see." A moment later, a mysterious aura flowed from the alcohol, and a sword surrounded by a pure white light rose. The star relic, heavenly sword of gathering clouds, has appeared. As expected, it appeared. There was nothing wrong with the method from Ways of Survival. Yu Jin-hyuk reached at his hand. "This is mine." "Hey, we caught him together." "I was the one who caught him." Usually, I would have insisted by Yu Jin-hyuk's eyes that we're serious this time. This son of a bitch. Of course, this relic itself wasn't my goal, but it was still bitter to have a star relic taken away right in front of me. I couldn't fight him here, so I gave up on the sword. The star relic grass-cutting sword has appeared. A knife rose from the alcohol. Eh? The contents of Ways of Survival flowed quickly through my head. Names give birth to narratives, and narratives are reproduced in reality. In the world of the Star Stream, Ame no Murakumo no tsurugi has a total of 5 names. In other words, Ame no Murakumo no tsurugi isn't one sword. I belatedly realized perhaps the name Ame Murakumo no tsurugi was used for 5 things in total. In other words, one sword appeared in Ways of Survival, and the other 4 weren't mentioned. I quickly grabbed the knife. "Then this is mine. Any complaints?" "That..." Yu Jin-hyuk's narrowed eyes stared at me before he turned away. "Do what you want." I inwardly sighed with relief. I was satisfied with the grip of the knife in my hand. It was the second in the Ame no Murakumo no tsurugi, the grass-cutting sword. This sword contained the power of a dragon killer. I didn't need to be afraid of any dragon species that I encountered in the future. Lee Ji watched from the side and pouted. "These petty-minded males obtain the swords." Lee Ji joked playfully before poking the jar of alcohol. "Can we drink this now? The smell isn't a joke." "You're a minor." It wasn't just Lee Ji. People were flocking to the golden-colored alcohol. Everyone seemed to be hungry for alcohol. Well, they would become drunk just from smelling it. "Drink up, everyone." People started to drink like crazy after I gave my permission. "Oh, how could it have this taste? A heavenly drink!" The people drank the golden alcohol and exclaimed with joy. It was fermented with the magic power of a constellation, so it would naturally have good taste. In fact, the alcohol content in it was insignificant, but it also had the effect of increasing stats. "Aren't you drinking?" I asked Yu Jin-hyuk. I looked closer and saw that Yu Jin-hyuk was making a simple dish. He was slicing and roasting meat and vegetables. It was an outdoor party, so the food ingredients brought by the small people piled up in the area. However, Yu Jin-hyuk's cooking... Yu Jin-hyuk spoke in a cold tone. "I don't consume anything made by others." "Are you afraid of being poisoned?" "It's because it isn't delicious." "How delicious can the food you make..." I said this, but I quickly took a bite out of the dish Yu Jin-hyuk was making. Then... No, what was this? Lee Solhwa, who was helping Yu Jin-hyuk nearby, smiled and said, "Is it delicious?" "Yes." It was damn delicious. Really, it was delicious. No, it was the best dish I'd ever eaten. What was this meat skewer? One side of the expressionless Yu Jin-hyuk's mouth curved up. Even if he was a regressor, how could this bastard cook so well? I mumbled something and moved away when I heard something that was like a musical instrument. It was excellent music that was very calm and profound. I followed the sound and saw a doll sitting on top of the castle. It was the smallest person, who was handsome as Yu Jin-hyuk. It was Kyrgyos Rodgrame. He sat at the ledge and played the viola while staring at the distant sky. It was gentle and sometimes sad. It was filled by a faint longing. The noisy crowd stopped one by one and listened to the music. The exaggerated heat cooled down. First, someone's eyes reddened, and the next person burst into tears. It seemed contagious, and they all started to cry. As if they missed the moments they had to cry, everyone burst out crying. The inhabitants of Peaceland also experienced the scenarios. This was music that comforted them. I drank a bit of the alcohol while listening to the melody. Then Oscar Ren came up to me. She hadn't joined the Japanese group. I asked her, "Renshi, have you seen Hansuyan?" "Ah, I was telling her a few settings, and she suddenly said there was a place she had to go." "I see. It seems she left to find a hidden piece. That girl." The sound of the viola spread through the broken castle, and I recalled something as I saw Oscar Ren's face. A person who had reached the end of a long dream was likely to make this face. I thought I could ask now. "How do you feel?" "It is weird." She hesitated for a moment. "I'm thinking that I shouldn't have given up." I understood immediately what she was saying. She licked her lips before opening her mouth, breaking the moist film on her mouth. "Who would have thought of this when reading my manga?" "Someone obviously did." Oscar Ren smiled sadly and looked down at her hands. Her red cheeks made it clear that she had drank a lot of alcohol. I suddenly had a thought. Maybe I'm not a member of a world someone drew. I paused before saying, "Perhaps it is a world that doesn't matter." "Huh?" "There is the story I wanted to hear last time." I noticed Oscar Ren didn't understand and added a bit more explanation. Oscar Ren said, and an email arrived shortly after the series ended. They wanted to borrow the setting of my manga." I was a bit surprised by the unexpected words. There was no such thing in Ways of Survival. "Borrow the setting?" "Yes, I didn't think about it much at the time, but this situation occurred not long afterwards." "Do you remember the exact details? For example, an email address or..." As soon as I replied to the email, all related emails were suddenly erased, so the detailed address... I see. Oscar Ren heard something in the distance that made her feel sorry. She hesitated before adding, I'm not certain, but I think the email started with a T?" "T." I became dazed and reflectively asked, "Could it be TLS 123?